60% of the time, somebody's crying in our meetings, at least 60% of the time. And that's good. That means that we're getting at whatever is really the crux of the problem. 10% of personal finance has to do with mathematics. It's not that hard. The math's not that complicated. It's the other stuff.
You're listening to Everyone's Talking Money, the show that's all about making life richer. Whether you're here to crush debt, build wealth, or finally feel in control of your cash, you are in the right place. What if your money advice was driven by your goals, not someone else's commission check? That's the future of financial planning, and it's already happening. For decades, financial planning has been built around products, sales quotas, and complicated comp structures that left most people wondering, wait, who is this really helping? But a quiet revolution is happening in the world of financial advice. Fiduciaries, fee-only planners, and hourly financial coaches are rewriting the rules, making guidance transparent, accessible, and built around you. I'm your host, Shari, and today I'm joined by Lori Atwood, founder of Fearless Finance. Lori's one of the early adopters of this model, and together we're digging into how financial planning has evolved from transactions to trust, what fiduciary really means, and why women especially benefit from advice that's free from products, pressure, or pretense. This episode is going to change how you think about financial advice. Let's get into it. Lori, you've been in finance for over 20 years. You started your career on the trading floor. So you've really seen this industry transform. And now you work as a fiduciary, which we'll get into what that means, but fiduciary and fee-based hourly advice. For someone that's not in finance, that's quite a 180.
I did start out in investment banking and on the trading floor, and I learned a lot. It was very male dominated, which it may still be. It was very harsh on people who, wanted to have a life outside of it and that sort of thing. And so I never thought it was going to be my whole life. And I did a lot of other aspects of finance. I managed money. I worked in private equity, and I had a child. And I always knew I wanted to be home with her for a little while. And I was doing consulting here and there. And then I thought, gosh, I really want my own business. And so I started making these short videos. And this is all before there were Reels and Instagram, short videos on child rearing, things like detangling hair and figuring out what to say to bullies and that kind of thing. And I took these videos and I was like, wow, the information is really, really good, but the format lacks a little charisma. It's not as engaging. So I thought, how am I going to fix this? So I called up everyone I knew and I said, can I come and give a finance seminar and videotape myself so I can test different things? And people said yes. And I went and I did these things. And then afterwards, people came up and said, hey, do you take clients? And then I finally said yes. And I got myself regulated. And I got my appropriate initials behind my name, whatever you want to call it. And the clients just came. And I never wanted to manage money. I never wanted to I didn't even like doing it when I was doing it back in San Francisco. And clients were like, wait, can I just pay you by the hour and you're going to tell me what to do because my basement just flooded and I need to do a French drain, which is $20,000 and I don't know what to do. And I said, yes. And that's the origin story of Fearless Finance. But I'd love to say, oh, I'm just such a genius and I figured all this out. No, that's not true. It's that I was available when people needed answers and I had some answers. And so it really is the fact that there is a huge demand for people trying to get financial advice and answers without a bunch of strings attached.
And I even think if you meet a financial advisor on the street and you can meet 15 and say, tell me about how you work with your clients, you're going to get 15 different answers. If you meet a financial planner on the street, tell me how you work with your clients, you're still going to get 15 different answers, but they'll be a little bit more similar. But I think people don't even know where to go, who to talk to. I'll speak with someone and say, oh, I have a financial advisor. And I'm like, oh, okay, tell me what they do. And it's like they sell life insurance, which that's great. Life insurance is great. But does that make them an advisor? But we can just use that name. And you said I got the appropriate initials. And that is super important. to differentiate and provide a space where people feel comfortable asking questions, because a financial advisor, are they giving advice? Maybe, maybe not. Or are they, telling you what stocks to pick or managing money that way? You don't
That's
really know until you
and
start working with them.
and so for me, it's a great question. And for me, the key is, how is this person getting paid? How is the person getting paid? If the person is not charging you, then you are the product. And they're getting paid by selling you whatever it is, whether it's insurances, annuities, this closed end, or that closed end fund, whatever it is. That's how they're getting paid. People don't do this for free. And so you always want to know how a person's getting paid. And what I felt was so important is that people needed the ability to get fiduciary, meaning that their best interests are first, advice when they want it, in a way that they can pay for it in a way they understand, right? I mean, your plumber comes, fixes your toilet, and you write him or her a check because he spent an hour and a half at your house fixing the toilet. People understand that. That makes sense to them. And there's no real reason why financial advice is not like that either. I mean, when John Bogle started Vanguard and unleashed index funds on the world, people were like, that's never going to work. And now people realize that that's, for retail investors, that's the right way to invest. And so I think that our sector is moving toward fee for service. And I think the most digestible fee for service business model for most people certainly in the asset accumulation stage of life, meaning, sort of 28 to 55, getting married, having babies, changing careers, is by the hour. Because when you're in front of that person, and then that you pay for that amount of time. And people said to me constantly, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. Well, now we're regulated by the SEC and we're nationwide, and it's working. And it's because people want digestible financial advice that they know is for them, bespoke for them, not a bot, not ChatGPT, but for them.
You mentioned fiduciary, and that's a big word, especially if someone is starting their journey when it comes to financial planning or working with a financial professional. A
Yeah,
fiduciary is legally obligated to act in your best interest. There are a license and exams and continuing education that you have to do in order to be a fiduciary. And it kind of sounds crazy that is even a thing.
I
Like,
know.
wait, you're not already?
How can you
You
not
have to
be?
do extra
Yeah.
steps to act in my best interest?
Yeah, I have to see if you're acting in my best interest. Yeah, I agree with you. I've always agreed with that. But it's not even just that people, and you alluded to this a few minutes ago. People call themselves all kinds of names. It's completely in compliance in our sector, but it's confusing. And so what I say to people all the time is, like, even if you go to somebody who's going to manage your assets under management, and you're going to pay them some percentage, and they say, oh, well, your assets grow and my fee grows, so everybody's winning. Except if you go to that same person and you're like, my daughter's having a wedding and I want to take X amount of dollars out, or I'd like to buy a beach house, I want to take Y amount of dollars out. They're going to do everything they can do to keep those dollars under management. So even though they say they're a fiduciary, they're still not open to all of the possible outcomes for you and your finances. Because of course, as a normal person, they're worried about their own livelihood. If you're paying by the hour, I want you to have the beach house. I have no reason not to want you to have the beach house or to have the daughter's wedding or whatever it is. And so you want to make sure that your interests are aligned with whoever's giving you advice. And you certainly would want to do that even with, going back to my plumber, right? You'd want to do that. If the guy is selling toilets, the chances of him saying you need a new one are high.
The alternative to fiduciary, or what kind of advisors were before, was they just had to offer you or recommend to you what was suitable.
Mm-hmm.
And suitable it's defensible. Like, if you were to go to your advisor and go, why did you do this? They can defend it. They can say, this is why I suggested it. Here's
Right.
all of the things. And it's defensible or defendable, but it doesn't have to be the best option for you. It can be a
That's right.
perfectly fine one. What could have been the best option, the risk, what could have been the best option was not offered, or maybe not as pushed on you as the user. It could be because the advisor wasn't getting paid as much for that product,
Or at
that
all.
or at all. And that was why the financial services industry was shifting from suitability and commission kind of goes hand in hand to fiduciary and fee. Fiduciary fee, that goes hand in hand as well. So the industry was shifting because the advisor could give you something that was perfectly good and they made more money on it, but there could have been something better that they made less money on, but they could defend why they were recommending you one product over another. But when you're a fiduciary, like you said, it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, because it does matter, but compensation wise, it doesn't matter to them if what route you end up going, what investment you end up in, because they're going to put everything on the table, pros and cons, weigh everything out with you, talk everything out with you. And no matter what route you go, their compensation's the same because they're getting a fee, and in your case, and getting an
That's right.
hourly fee. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, someone else you know will as well. Do me a favor, hit that share button while we take a quick ad break, and I'll see you in just a minute.
And I think there are a few things that besides the obvious sort of fairness and equitability, this allows communities who typically were a little intimidated by financial advice access. It's about accessibility, especially women who, maybe were sick of being mansplained to or talked down to or whatever it happened to be, even though they make most of the purchases in the household. That goes away when you have somebody who's just listening and giving you the advice that you need. I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is, you go through this in many of your episodes on this podcast, and certainly there's lots and lots of books and other people talking about it. Money is only about 10% mathematical. It's 90% all of the other goo, the emotions, the psychology, whatever you're carrying from your past and whatever, and your habits with your partner's habits. And when I'm selling insurance products, I don't care about any of that. But when I'm looking at what's going to be best for you, I care a lot about that. I care a lot about the fact that your partner seems to hoard savings, but you are somebody who's more willing to spend and it's causing some stress. I care a lot more about that because all the options are on the table and I want to give you the absolute best advice. So it's
I
more
think,
accessible, more inclusive.
yeah, the barrier to entry is definitely a real thing. Yeah, women are still not well represented in the financial services industry. I think we're sitting at like 16% of
Probably.
advisors are women, and 50% of the world's population are women. So if you're just trying to find someone that like looks like you, speaks like you, thinks similar to you, you have to work really hard to find that, because again, only
Yes,
16% are women. And then that still doesn't even guarantee that just because you're the same gender, you think similar and still are that similar and you like them enough. So it's very hard for women to find someone in financial services that isn't a bro, that isn't going to talk down to them, isn't going to be pushy, doesn't wear the suit kind of thing, and
yeah,
just makes them feel comfortable. And I think by moving into the fiduciary world, more and more advisors, as they move into the fiduciary world, you can't help but put more of a human element into it. Because if it's an hourly arrangement that you have, it's conversations. The client is paying you for your time. You're
absolutely.
talking things out versus, all right, let me just sign them up for this A share commission based mutual fund where you get the upfront
Exactly.
commission. Let me just get this paperwork and move on to the next, the churning, if you will, of the
Exactly.
clients.
Exactly. In my firm's case, we're all women except one of the advisors. And that's just it opens up a whole new world for people to feel comfortable, even if they're not, because sometimes it's like, a heterosexual couple and they're not getting along and the crux of the argument seems to be finances, and sometimes it's just easier to see someone, where you don't feel competitive or whatever it is with them. And so we find that it's a much more comfortable situation for people no matter where they are in their financial journey, where they are in their life journey and their relationships. People who are just divorcing. I mean, it's a shocking trauma to the system, and being sold an annuity is not what you need at that point. And so there's a lot of listening that goes on. And even when we're giving advice on investments, we don't do surveys and questionnaires. It's all done by discussion because you can really get to what the person's feeling.
Call it a first date when you're meeting with a planner. To one, you should go on multiple first dates. You need to talk to who, this person should have. Your financial planner should have a role in your life. You should be able to feel
Yeah,
comfortable enough to have conversations with them, be a little bit vulnerable. And I truly believe that the fiduciary arrangement it appeals more to women because it's conversation. It's talking things out. You're not being sold something.
that's
So
right.
you can trust who's on the other side of the computer or on the other side of the desk,
Yep,
because they're not they're exactly what they're getting out of it, because you're writing the check when the meeting's over, or however you're
that's right.
paying. Exactly what they're getting. They're not getting anything more from you based on the products or the services that you got. And I think that it is, you should treat it like a date. You should, when you're deciding to move into the financial planning part of your life, right? Because it certainly is a decision everyone makes,
Yeah,
that you need to know that person and date them a little bit and ask questions. And your first conversation, you mentioned, we don't do the questionnaires, right? Because that takes the human element completely out of
right.
it. Like it just, what's going on? Why are you here? When you're meeting with someone for the first time, I say all the time that you don't just wake up on a random Tuesday and go, I'm going to go get myself a financial planner today.
No,
Usually something happens, right? Something happens, a life event, or like that light bulb goes off. What do you generally see with your clients? What is that light bulb moment for them to make them seek out professional advice?
since that's a great question. Since we're more accessible than, some big firm with a big marble office, we get clients who are typically earlier in their journey than others, because sometimes people might not seek help until pre-retirement or in retirement, which is way further down the line. But we see people as the events in their lives change. It's usually getting married, buying a house, having a first child. Sometimes it's a career change, many, many firsts. And there, a lot of times people come and say, we're getting married. We're going to buy a place. We want to have kids in the next year. We don't know where to start. And I'm thrilled because we can get good habits in. We can get good planning in. We can start out with the right footing, if you will. And so it's typically a life event like that, but it definitely doesn't have to be. Sometimes I just had a woman I was talking to this morning, and she just was like, I just don't feel like I know what's going on in my finances. And that's what we're here for. And when my daughter was real little, she was like 6 or 7 years old. And she's like, I'm trying to explain to my friends what you do, mommy. And I said, well, I'm like a comb. I comb through people's hair, if you think of it as their finances. I comb through it, make it smooth, make it manageable, and make it easy. And that's what I do. And that's what we do. We're trying to reduce stress, because I believe deeply that if we can reduce stress for people around finances, which is one of the major stressors in life, people are better people to each other. It's increasing the well-being of the world, of the community, and of the world. So reducing that stress around finances is important for everything and everybody that you kind of come into contact with.
Women who have a good job, they've accumulated money, but they're doing the quote unquote right things because like they're just like, well, I think that this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'm just going to do it. And they get to a point where they've amassed some money and they've done well. And I call them accidental millionaires. It doesn't mean they have $1 million, but it means like they're on their way. And it's purely because like they save, they contributed to their 401k, they bought a house, they have equity, but they go, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this was accidental. I think I'm doing the right thing. On
Right.
paper, it kind of looks like I'm doing the right thing, but I'm still questioning everything I do with my finances every single day. How often do you have the conversations of like, can you just explain to me everything I have? And like, am I doing the right thing?
It's the combing through. We go into everything. We explain. I mean, I can say, "Oh, we're going to create a balance sheet for you." Most people have no, sort of understanding of what a balance sheet is, or maybe they have a little bit of an understanding. I walk through. We walk through exactly what all of that means. What does net worth mean? People talk about it endlessly. What does it really mean for you? And then we talk about cash flow. How much can you save each month? And then we talk about things like saving for goals and contributing to your retirement plan and making sure you're on track. And for some people, just the clarity, even if they're doing it all right, the clarity of knowing the confirmation that they're doing it right takes an enormous weight off their shoulders. And so it's the age of confirmation now. I mean, information's everywhere, if not more than everywhere. But people still want to know they're doing it right, which is what you said. They may be doing it accidentally right. Maybe they're whatever it is. And then if you can, again, put their mind at ease, reduce their stress around finances and money, you have made the world a better place because they're a better person in it, a more confident person, a more empowered person.
Absolutely. I mean,
Great.
money, obviously, as we know, and everyone that listens to the show, money affects everything we do. So it's such a horrible feeling if we use money every single day, multiple times a day. We need it to accomplish things, to fulfill our goals. And if you have a negative relationship with it, or you're not confident, or it stresses you out, what a terrible mind space to be in every day, multiple times a day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's terrible. So you are making the world a better place. It doesn't mean we're now obsessed with our money. It just means you're making people's lives easier
We're
by
clearing
helping
space.
them.
We're
Yeah.
clearing space for other things that really do, need the space, children and families and elderly parents and whatever else it is. We're clearing that space because what I find over these years of doing this is that, who you are with your money, it doesn't really change. You're consummate saver, you're a hoarding saver, you're a spender. And so what we can help with is to put guidance and scaffolding around that so that you aren't mad at yourself. You don't hate yourself. You don't try to change you. You're not trying to stick a round peg in a square hole. You know who you are, what's going on, and you know what guidelines you have. Like people say to me all the time, they're like, okay, so if I put this amount away each month, you're okay with me spending all the rest? I'm like, yeah. And you have no idea how much relief that is because so many couples are arguing, oh, did you just buy that pair of shoes? Oh, did you just buy that, whatever it is? That all goes away when you know what you're doing and you know that the road is going to lead you to where you want to get to. And that makes everyone better.
You mentioned when a plumber comes to your house, you can see what they're doing, you write them a check, and that's it. And I find and that's the way most transactions are, right? You provide a service, pay for it, and then we move on. What is it though about money that do you think makes people nervous or hesitant or not willing to pay for the service? Like I often feel like people will take, and I think it's maybe a little bit more male tilted, will take a DIY approach because they think they can do it, but they might not hesitate to pay someone for something else. But it's like, why do you think we're hesitant to pay for advice or not sometimes see the value that professional financial advice provides?
That's a great question. And this is just my own view on this, but I think it's because we all think we're supposed to be able to handle it. We're supposed to be able to handle our mental health. We're supposed to be able to handle our regular health. We're supposed to be able to handle, I mean, the stuff that we can handle. I don't mean if you have some gruesome injury or something. And we're supposed to be able to handle our money. It's part of being an adult. It's adulting. I'm supposed to be able to handle my toddler. I shouldn't need a bunch of help. And so there's a bunch of shame that goes with it. And so for me, this is not about shame. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about making sure that we don't have regrets later, right? And so we say this all the time on our site, and we say this to people all the time is There's no question that's too small and no problem that's too big for us. There is no shame. We're not here to judge anyone. There's no judgment at all. If the basement is flooded and you need a French drain and it's $20,000, let's figure out how to do it. If you did a financial oopsie and you made some mistake in your past, I'm not going to sit and dwell on it. As long as we've tried to fix it as best we can, let's make sure it doesn't happen again and move on. It's the shame, I think. And it just holds us all back from getting help we need and from getting things where they need to be.
For some reason, we feel like as adults, we should be, and you said it, we should be able to handle this. We should be able to manage our money. We should be able to do these things. But it's like, I went to college for finance. Like, there's other jobs that people went to college for or have decades and decades worth of experience in. I don't know I go to the chiropractor twice a week. I don't know how to crack my own back appropriately. Right. You go to the dentist for my cleanings. I go to the doctor
Yeah.
once a year for my physical so she can give me my gold star of approval of, yep, your blood tests look great. Everything looks great. See you in a year. I rely on experts for all of that stuff. And they have the degrees and they have the credentials and all of that. And it's just something with money that it's like money is something we feel like we should know, but we were never taught it. It was never
No.
talked about in a house, or if it was, probably it was not talked about positively in your house. So like, this can be a rhetorical question, but it's like, why do we think we're supposed to know this stuff when no one ever
Well,
taught us it?
that's what's so funny because you just said you go to the doctor for your gold star, right? But what goes into that gold star? What goes into it is drinking lots of water, sleeping well, eating well, hopefully getting some exercise, no dangerous habits, right? All of this stuff goes into it. And so you can think you're doing all of these things, but you still need the checkup. You still need the checkup. And every once in a while, there's stuff that you have no control over. If you have some family history of high blood pressure, no amount of exercise in the world possibly could help, right? So, so when something is really, really wrong, people will go to an expert. But what I like to encourage is that I want to see you if you're jogging 4 times a week and you're eating well and you're sleeping well, because I still want to make sure that everything is going right. And people don't think that they need to do that on their money. And it's either that or there's again, wrapped up in shame is the, oh my God, she's going to see me for who I am. I'm a this or I'm a that, or I'm a profligate spender and to use that analogy again with your doctor is she's going to see that I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day or whatever it is. And I don't want to deal with any of that. And the thing is that it's going to come back one way or the other. It's going to come back. There's either going to be stress in the relationship, stress on the job. There's going to be stress with whatever it is, and it's going to come back. So let's get it before it gets to that point.
I went into a meeting once with a husband and wife, and it was much more the wife's idea to meet with me than it was the husband's.
That's
And then
typical.
she shared with me, I think he wanted to he wanted to crawl under the table, but he was like, what is she going to tell us that we already don't know? And she's like, I don't know, but let's at least find out, or let's
Yeah.
at least try, or even if we already know this stuff. And I said, I'm the in between. You have your side, he has his side, and you both aren't wrong and you both aren't right. You both are. But my job is whatever you're doing isn't working. That's why you're here. So let's figure it out. And you may know everything. You may know everything that there is to know about personal finance and everything you need to do, but obviously something's not working. Something's not clicking. And
So
that's why
sometimes you need, yeah. And
a
sometimes
third
you need that
party.
third party in it, because I know with couples at least, and it is usually the woman who initiates it, but it doesn't have to be. It could be impossible to get that partner to couples therapy, but it may not be impossible to get him to me, to a financial planner. And so we start there. And I'm not a therapist and have no training in any of that. But I could say you may need a third party to help you navigate some of this communication, or you may need it, or talk it through with another, whatever it is. And it's different when it comes from a third party than that spouse that maybe you've been having this kind of, stress with for a long time.
What percentage of like the time that you spend with a client in the meeting, is it more working at hashing out some of these emotions, some of these issues, than it is actually just talking about the finance of it all?
Well, it's funny. So I'm married to a very stoic Scandinavian guy. And when we were all home for, lockdown and he was working in the house as well, he's like, I hear people cry. I'm like, you know what? 60% of the time somebody's crying in our meetings, at least 60% of the time. And that's good. That means that we're getting it, whatever is really the crux of the problem. And so I don't know what that ratio is, but it's more than 50%. It's a lot. It's a lot because, like I said earlier, 10% of personal finance has to do with mathematics. It's not that hard. The math's not that complicated. It's the other stuff. It's the opening space for somebody to actually say their piece. It's opening space for them to feel like, okay, some of this may have come from my background or maybe it came from some experiences I had, but we're going to work going forward. We're going to focus on what to do going forward and empowering people that they don't have to be whatever baggage they're carrying from their first family. It doesn't have to be that way.
So you work with your clients hourly. So your fee schedule is very transparent. Your clients know exactly how much they're paying based on the time. On average, how many hours a year do you meet with clients? Like it for a single woman or a married couple, like what's a reasonable expectation of time that they would spend with you throughout the year?
And the answer is not much. I mean, typically with our planners, we recommend 2 to 4 hours for the initial plan spread over 3 meetings, 3-ish meetings. Each meeting is an hour, hour and a quarter. We charge down to the quarter hour. So that would be the initial plan. And then ongoing, we like people to have a check-in, just like you have a Gold Star physical. And that's usually 1 to 1.5 hours each year. If the client is close to retirement or is just newly in retirement, we could meet semi-annually because people are very nervous about no longer receiving a check, but having to use savings to live. And so that typically will be semi-annually, but it's not much of an investment for your well-being and your mental health, which is essentially what we're talking about. Yeah, per year, it's 1 to 1.5 hours after the initial plan.
And the initial plan, so that could sound super intimidating to someone. Like we have to create an initial financial plan.
Okay.
What's included in like the initial plan? What are some of the things that you look at
Yeah.
initially with someone to make sure, for that financial physical, if you will?
That's right. So we start by generating a balance sheet. I want to know where your savings are, where your debt is. It gives me an idea of overall health of the client, of the household. We talk about retirement contributions and what retirement will look like, especially if they're kind of in their late 40s, early 50s. It's closer if you're 23. It's more about making sure you're contributing enough. We then talk about filling your savings buckets, emergency savings, rainy day savings. They're different for me. I know you had an episode you talked about sinking funds and that kind of thing, and I love those, by the way. And we talk about where your cash buckets should be. And then we talk about goals. Do you need to replace a car? Do you have a child who needs extra resources? Do you want to redo the basement? Whatever it is. How are we going to get there? To get there, we need to know what your cash flow is, how much you can save each month or each year. And so we finish up doing your cash flow, understand your savings. And then we have a plan where I can say, look, I want you to save $700 a month into this account. When it gets to this level, you can go out and buy that car, that replacement car, or whatever it happens to be. Or, this is how much you contribute to the household now. And you want to make your side hustle your main gig. We need to get that side hustle to the point where it's generating X, Y, and Z. And so altogether, that creates an initial plan. And then we're ready to do estate planning, insurances, and then lastly, investments and portfolio. Because how can you make those decisions without knowing all the other stuff?
That is so true. And I think that is where you need to start off. You need to have a picture. If you are meeting with an advisor and they're saying, well, just start setting aside $300 a month and you'll be and invest it and it'll be fine. And they don't even know if you can afford the $300 a month.
Yeah.
And that's where that like kind of sums up why we're here today is because the advisors of the past, like that was the answer. Well, just start investing, start saving, it's fine. And they don't know anything else about you. They
They
don't know how
don't.
much you have in your checking account. They don't know how much debt you have. And it's like, it was like the same pill for every ailment. It was just the same answer.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, what if, the school is calling you and they're like, your child needs to be tested for X, Y, and Z, or, things that happen and they happen suddenly and you don't know where to turn. A lot of times it is something with the house or some huge repair, whatever. You don't know where to turn. And that guy selling you mutual funds doesn't care because that's not how he makes his money.
So, as we wrap up, you talk a lot about financial adulting. So, for someone, that's been listening, that reads the finance books, and it's like, well, I still feel like something's missing. What is financial adulting to you? And what are some of the steps to become a financial adult?
So, yeah, I like to think of it as there are five basic or foundational steps to having your proverbial stuff together. Everything else after that is going to be icing on the cake. The first, and it is by far the most important of the five, is that you spend less than you earn every month or year or however you're counting it. Less than you earn after tax and benefits, net. It can't be emphasized enough. That is the key to financial success. The second thing is that you have, and depending on the size of your household, some money set aside for rainy day events. That's the car repairs, the dental work that's not covered, the huge emergency vet bill because your dog just ate chocolate or something like that. That's a rainy day event. The third is an emergency savings. Emergencies differ from rainy day. Rainy day is an event and an expense. Emergency is a total loss of income. It's usually due to the big three, some health or disability, divorce, and of course, job loss. So you need to have 3 to 6 months of your expenses so you know where to turn if heaven forbid something happens. That's number three. Number four is that you are preparing for retirement. In this country, it's a big burden to prepare for retirement. And I need you contributing a certain amount. It's a different amount for everyone because some people have a nice, generous match and some people don't have as generous of a match. But typically, as a very basic rule of thumb, I want 15% of your income going to some retirement account somewhere, whether it's with your employer or not. If your employer is doing 5% match, then 10 is enough for you. And then you have to circle back to rule number one, right? If I'm saving appropriately for retirement, am I still spending less than I earn? And then number five is that you're managing any consumer debt you may have accumulated along the way, and you have a way to get out of it and to pay it off. If those things are being managed, you by far are a financial adult. And everything else is icing on the cake, like how do I buy my first house? What stocks should I pick? All of those things. Five financial fundamentals are extremely unglamorous. They're not sexy at all, but they're the bedrock.
Lori, it's time for our money confessions, where I ask you some real deal questions about your money and you just answer as openly and as honestly as you can. If money were to show up at your door, what would you say to it?
I would say, let me introduce you to my Vanguard account. You guys are going to become friends.
What's a recurring expense you have that you love, even if others might call it ridiculous?
Wow, I'm really outing myself here. I get a massage every month. It really, because I work out a lot, my back gets tight. I'm not as young as I used to be, blah, blah, blah. And, my husband used to think it was frivolous, but I've made him realize, he's realized on his own, is that I need it to be who I am and to be able to function well as a professional and in the household. And I'm willing to forego other stuff. I've never carried a purse in my life. I don't own one. Like there are other things that I'm willing to forego because that's a priority.
If you were gifted $1,000 and you had to spend it today, no saving, no investing, what would you do with it?
Interesting. Knowing me, I would take half of it and spend it on something for the family and take half of it and donate it.
And what's your favorite cheap thrill? Something under $20 that brings you joy every time.
Oh my God, I have a teenage daughter. Please, oh please, Summer Fridays lip gloss. Oh my God. Although I think that's $22, but yeah, I love them.
Talking with Lori really shows just how much the financial advice industry has evolved from a sales driven industry to one focused on trust, clarity, and connection. And that's exactly what we all deserve when it comes to our money. Here's your takeaway. You deserve advice that's aligned with your goals. Always ask how your advisor gets paid, because transparency is the first step towards financial peace of mind. If this episode gave you some clarity, share it with a friend who might also be ready to rethink their relationship with money. And remember, you can go even deeper with everything we talk about here by joining the Talking Points newsletter. Each week, I share smart, actionable tips and exclusive insights you won't hear anywhere else. You can sign up at everyone'stalkingmoneypodcast.com or hit the link in your show notes. And also, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And let's keep the conversation going with me on Instagram at Everyone's Talking Money. Because at the end of the day, money should be a tool to live life on your terms, not a source of stress.